Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest presidents in American history, was known for being energetic and efficient. His philosophy for achieving success was to always sharpen the axe. He famously said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Although this is an effective strategy, most people don't use it. Instead, they tend to start tasks immediately, using only the most obvious tools and methods. But that isn't usually the best way to get things done. Before starting a task, take time to research different ways of completing it. Pay attention to how others do things, and look for methods that differ from your own. Finding the most effective tools for the job is also important. 10. By taking more time to prepare, you can improve the quality and efficiency of your work. An elephant in a room is impossible to miss. Despite this, some people prefer to pretend it isn't there. The same thing happens with the internet. People choose to believe that it is full of viral information created and shared by everyday people. While this does happen, very few things actually go viral. Most social media posts barely get shared at all. Instead, the majority of the news and information online comes straight from the original source. Big companies such as TV channels and radio stations generate most of what people see on the internet. The myth of going viral is appealing because it lets us dream that a single post can make us famous. So we choose to believe that the internet is a perfect democracy, even though we're really just ignoring a very big elephant. People believe that they are a product of their surroundings, but it is actually the opposite. People's surroundings are largely shaped by their decisions and the circumstances they create for themselves. Therefore, it is important to approach life actively rather than passively. It is more likely that seeking happiness will lead you to success than it is that success will bring happiness to you. So don't allow the storms that life sends your way to push you around and decide your path. Instead, find your own way out of the stormy weather by facing any problems or conflicts you have directly and looking for ways to solve it. By dealing with your issues, you will contribute to a more peaceful and sunny environment around you. If you allow them to remain unresolved, you'll be lost in the cold, miserable storm. Remember, this creates that, not the other way around. The influence that empathy has on our daily lives is easy to recognize. It's the reason we love to be immersed in a good novel or get hooked on a new TV drama. Aside from being entertaining, their stories provide opportunities for us to feel what the characters are going through. We imagine being in their situation and find ourselves laughing or crying along with them. Empathy also plays an important role in our personal relationships. By empathizing with the experiences of our friends and loved ones, as opposed to just playing armchair quarterback to their struggles, we can understand them better and provide more meaningful support. Not only is this helpful for them, but it's also beneficial for us. Studies have shown that being empathetic can have a variety of positive effects, such as improving communication skills and reducing stress levels. Information technology has advanced at an incredible rate, greatly increasing the efficiency of modern businesses. However, information technology does carry some excess baggage. In order to use it on a daily basis, companies require a lot of hardware and energy, both of which are costly. Producing a single 32-megabyte microchip that weighs less than 3 grams requires approximately 1.7 kilograms of material and thousands of potentially dangerous chemicals. And when that one microchip is put to use, it will go on to consume over 2 kilograms worth of fossil fuels over its lifespan. Considered individually, this doesn't seem like a lot. But microchips are being used in an increasing number of products, and the demand for computerized technology shows no signs of slowing down. Indeed, it seems we've only begun to understand the downsides of information technology. Learning a foreign language brings many obvious benefits, such as more travel options and better career opportunities. But, according to some psychologists, learning words in other languages can also make you happier. This is because many cultures have words that describe positive activities and emotions that aren't expressed in other cultures or can't be easily translated. Take, for example, the Japanese word ohanami, which is used to describe the action of gathering with others to appreciate flowers. Or consider the word morgenfrisk, a Danish term referring to the satisfaction that comes from having a good night's sleep. Having clear words for such experiences makes them seem more legitimate and easier to recognize, which, in turn, makes them easier to explain and share with others. With just a few new words, you can open doors you never knew existed and bring a little more happiness into your life. It is common to see meat packaging that boasts of humane treatment and processes that minimize the suffering of the animals. Consumers are attracted to these labels because they are morally concerned with the way in which the meat was obtained. However, a study suggests that there is another reason for using such labels. In an experiment, researchers gave participants identical meat samples presented in different ways. One was labeled as humanely raised, and the other was said to be from a factory. Surprisingly, the former was rated as tasting better than the latter. Participants even rated the humane labeled meat as superior to the factory labeled samples in terms of smell and look. These results show that there is a lot more to how consumers perceive a product's taste than simply its ingredients. Two people with similar diets may have very different physical appearances, even if their other activities are also comparable. Researchers at Yale University may have found the reason for this. The scientists discovered variances in the stomach signaling systems of rats. Indeed, the intensity with which the rat's stomach sent signals when they were full varied from rat to rat. In some cases, the signal was dull. This caused the rats to continue to eat even after they were full. This type of behavior eventually leads to obesity, which suggests that human obesity may be linked to more than just personal choices. Professor Tomasz Horvath argues that the nature of the connection between their stomachs and their brains might be causing certain people to consume more than they should consume. When shooting a basketball, it is desirable to make the ball spin in a backward direction. However, this is not done to use air resistance to make the ball curve, as it is in the sport of baseball. When shot at the hoop, a basketball moves too slowly for this to occur. Therefore, its path is not affected by the spin. So what is the purpose? If the ball is thrown directly through the hoop, there is none. But if it hits the backboard or the rim of the hoop first, this backspin will cause a change in velocity in the opposite direction. Therefore, rather than bouncing away at full strength, the ball will remain near the hoop. This makes it more likely that it will bounce once or twice and then fall through the net. In an experiment, researchers placed participants in groups. Some were randomly made team managers, a position of power, while the rest were assigned the low-power role of worker. After completing a group activity, each participant was asked to make a series of decisions. They were given the choice of receiving $120 now or a larger amount of money in 1 year. This amount started at $137 and was gradually increased up to $240. The researchers found that the people assigned low-power roles were less willing to postpone their rewards than the people assigned high-power roles. They concluded that people who have a lot of power are more confident about their future and therefore do not mind waiting for a reward. People with little power, on the other hand, face an uncertain future and prefer an immediate reward, even if it is smaller. One day, an elementary school student named Samuel was looking through his father's closet for a necktie to wear. He loved being fashionable, but none of his father's store-bought ties seemed good enough. Then he made a decision that would change his life. He decided to design his own homemade neckties. Now, after making several television appearances and signing a deal with a major sports league, Samuel has turned his homemade neckties into a business worth over $1 million. And he is doing it all while maintaining good grades in school. In a recent family interview, Samuel's father explained that he always encouraged his son's creativity, and he proudly wears a homemade necktie to work each day. Talking about his future, Samuel said that he intends to finish high school and then become an influential fashion designer. Around the world, Pickles are one of the most popular fermented foods. They can be found in everything from sandwiches and salads to sauces and side dishes. They even have their own holiday, called Pickle Day, which is celebrated on November 14th in the United States. Vegetables are the key ingredient in making pickles. To start with, they are immersed in vinegar or an extremely salty water called brine. This kicks off the fermentation process, which extends their shelf life by killing harmful bacteria. Some of the most common pickle varieties are made from cucumbers, onions, or radishes. Although their exact origin remains a mystery, scientists have found clues about the first pickles. Some evidence suggests that they were invented in ancient Mesopotamia using Indian cucumbers. However, other findings point to China, where they were created as a snack for workers building the Great Wall. Nathan gazed proudly into the mirror at his new martial arts uniform. His father, a renowned instructor, had finally agreed to start training him. Convincing his father hadn't been easy, so Nathan was determined to prove himself. Walking into the gym, he couldn't help but imagine all of the moves which his father was about to teach him, and he was eager to begin. To Nathan's surprise, however, his father didn't teach him anything about punching or kicking that day or in the days that followed. Instead, he taught him breathing exercises and slow, controlled movements. Frustrated, Nathan finally confronted his father. He said, "How can I become a great fighter if you won't teach me how to throw a punch?" His father just smiled and said, "Martial arts isn't about becoming a great fighter. It's about learning control and how to avoid fights." Standing on a balcony and looking down into the prison courtyard below, Matthew was stunned to hear his father's name called out. Until that moment, Matthew hadn't even been sure that his father was still alive. A group of men dressed in the uniforms of prisoners were gathered around a prison guard, and he watched as one of them raised his hand in response. Matthew leaned out over the balcony's railing, standing on the tips of his toes and trying to get a clear look at the man's face. His father had been arrested by soldiers more than a year ago, and Matthew could barely recall the features of his face. But when the man stepped forward into the light, all the memories came rushing back into his mind. It was definitely his father, and he was alive and well. Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov is credited with creating the first instance of behavioral conditioning by triggering dog salivation with a bell. Now, Japanese scientists have replicated this reaction in cockroaches. They managed to make the insects respond to certain smells, such as peppermint and vanilla. To achieve this, they gave the cockroaches a sugary liquid right after releasing these scents. They did this repeatedly over a period of time and then measured the cockroaches' salivation behavior when various smells were placed on their antennae. What they found was that the cockroaches began to salivate when exposed to vanilla and peppermint. However, when a different odor was used, they did not have the same reaction. Thus, the researchers successfully conditioned the animals to physiologically respond to stimuli that were previously irrelevant, just like Pavlov's dogs responded to the bell. Henry likes to plant flowers. It sounds like a normal hobby, but what makes it unusual is that he plants them in weird places. Every spring, he is busy turning land covered in garbage into beautiful fields of flowers. Henry covers the land in seeds, using a long reed that he carries with him to blow them into areas which are difficult to reach. Some people make fun of him, but he never lets it bother him. The other day, the owner of a lot tried to chase him away. Henry left, but returned days later to finish the job when no one was around. Imagine the owner's surprise months later when he saw colorful flowers growing in the shape of a giant letter H in his lot.
Drivers with poor attitudes toward driving are a big cause of traffic accidents, along with bad weather or unsafe road conditions. Many drivers don't have enough respect for driving. Some even insist that they can drink alcohol and still be alert when driving. But alcohol is a factor in over half of all fatal car accidents. In addition, Many drivers refuse to wear seatbelts, which also contributes to deaths from car accidents. Drivers are more likely to be seriously hurt or killed in car crashes when they don't buckle up. Also potentially deadly is the view that driving fast is the best way to drive. Those drivers should be aware that in areas where speed limits were lowered, traffic deaths fell significantly. On the other hand, in areas where high speeds are allowed, there are even more accidents. Human beings dream about many different things. Sometimes our dreams are influenced by recent events. These dreams are reflections of things that happened to us in the past day or two, so they can show us what is currently on our minds. Our pre-sleep conditions also influence our dreams, but they seem to be reflected oppositely. A recent study showed that people who exercised for 6 hours before going to sleep mostly had dreams that included little physical activity. Because of this, the researcher believes that the content of our dreams might offset whatever occurs in real life. Other research suggests that this applies to non-physical activities as well. For example, test subjects who spent the day alone generally had dreams that included a lot of social activity. Communication means more than just speaking and listening to the person you are interacting with. In fact, a large part of the exchange of information happens nonverbally. Specifically, the emotional meaning behind the messages being conveyed is almost entirely communicated through gestures, facial expressions, or even touching. Thus, without these forms of communication, the emotional aspect of a conversation would be completely lost. To make someone feel valued, for instance, simply speaking is insufficient. It is necessary to use nonverbal cues, such as gently patting the person's hand, to trigger the emotional response. Our natural instincts include the need for this kind of body language. Indeed, in the wild, even animals use physical communication to express emotions, particularly after a stressful situation. For example, they might snuggle to reassure one another after managing to escape from a predator. The surprising fact about global climate change is that it is being caused by one single species, humans. People might argue that a single species could not have such a big effect on the planet. But this is actually completely possible. In fact, we are not the first species to significantly change the planet. Billions of years ago, cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, became the first creatures to develop photosynthesis. This filled the atmosphere with oxygen. While it may seem like a positive change today, many species died because of the increase of oxygen. Unfortunately, today's climate change has the potential to be equally damaging. Therefore, if we don't want to lose many of our planet's precious species, we need to take action right away. Finding ways to limit traffic noise is not as easy as it may seem. The people who are negatively affected by this noise have no direct control over it. And there is no demand for noise limits, so it would be difficult to use taxation as an incentive to lower traffic noise, as is currently being done with carbon emissions. The European Union, however, has come up with an effective solution. It places limits on the amount of noise that can be created by motor vehicles. As a result, vehicle noise levels have reduced year after year. Car noise in EU countries is down 85% since 1970, and truck noise is 90% lower. This is a significant achievement that shows how regulation that drives technological development can be extremely effective. Physical failure occurs when we are unable to reach our goals in a sport or other physical activity. Calling this a failure, however, is merely a matter of perception. Our athletic performance is only a failure if we subjectively decide that it is. In other words, failure is in the eye of the beholder. Athletes often express displeasure with their game performance despite having achieved overall success in the contest. For example, after making several plays prevented the other team from scoring, a basketball player might have made a single mistake. Because of this, it is possible that she will conclude that she played poorly, even though her teammates and coaches would likely disagree. Therefore, our analyses of our past 9 athletic performance should only be done in the interest of improving our future performance.